Story 1. LSD, without a doubt, was going to lead me to self-harm, but I decided that if I was going to do it, I wanted one last trip. 14 hours later, my mind was completely refreshed. The slate was clean, and all negativity was gone. Now, 6 years later, I still cannot remember what anxiety or depression feels like. Cured me. Story 2. Lithium and Abilify. Before, I was a ball of rage and could barely function. Now, I'm much calmer, probably more boring, but overall healthier. Story 3. Adderall. I was 5 years old and threatening to harm myself because I knew I could do things but couldn't. I would cry while trying to read a single paragraph. On my first day taking my medication, I was able to read through an entire book. From that point on, I constantly had books taken from me because I read under my desk, under my blankets, and at recess. Story 4. Nifedipine and magnesium. Postpartum preeclampsia put me at risk of a heart attack, stroke, or seizure. I had to receive magnesium for 24 hours to prevent seizures and continue taking nifedipine until my blood pressure decreased. If my obstetrician had not required a blood pressure check 2 days after birth, I might not be here. Story 5. Herceptin for HER2-positive breast cancer. Before this drug, the life expectancy for this type of cancer was less than 2 years. After this targeted therapy was introduced, patients began to experience longer lives. Story 6. Scopri, epilepsy medication. I have struggled with epilepsy for approximately 16 years, experiencing grand mal seizures weekly. No medications were helping. I underwent partial brain removal 6 years ago, but still had about 2 to 3 seizures annually. In the last 8 months, since my doctor added this medication, I have been seizure-free. Story 7. I don't know if it saved my life, but taking Advair twice daily for my asthma has greatly improved my quality of life. Story 8. MDMA helped me reconnect with my emotions and the greater world around me. Years of post-traumatic stress disorder and severe depression had left me numb and disconnected. Story 9. Acid saved me, but it was very situational. I give it credit anyway. I was in a disco in Madrid, Spain in the 1970s around 2 a.m. I saw 4 couples turn into 4 guys dancing on the dance floor and knew a fight was about to happen. I was on some really good acid. One guy tossed a drink at another, and chaos began. I noticed locals grabbing chairs to back up their friends. It was a local and military thing. I was in the military when this happened. When I saw the backup coming in, I ran to the dance floor to even the odds. I was in the middle of it when I had a premonition and ducked my head. I never saw the guy, but someone broke a table over my head from behind. I saw broken wood. Then I saw nothing. If I had not broken that table with my head, I would have seriously injured myself. My friends thought I had just been killed. I got hit with a chair when I was halfway down and figured I should play dead. I did. I may have passed out. When I woke up, the fight was still happening all around me. It looked like a western with bottles flying in the saloon. I got up and confronted a local with a broken chair leg. He would swing it, I would block it, and then I kicked him in the chest. This happened about 3 times. I thought I was sweating, so I wiped my brow, and my hand was all red. Then I remembered getting hit. I had to work my way through the crowd, reaching my friends. They got me a ride to the base, and I went to the emergency room. The acid helped a lot, keeping me calm about the whole thing. I received 13 stitches on my head and dealt with some criticism from my commander. Story 10. This terrible substance called lactulose binds with ammonia in your bloodstream and shuttles it to your intestines without involving your liver, which usually takes care of it. If your liver is having trouble or failing, as mine was, ammonia can build up and severely affect your brain. I was feeling tired, tried to get back on the interstate, and realized I didn't know where I was. I pulled off to the side of the road, attempted to use my phone's GPS but couldn't, and decided a nap was necessary. I woke up some time later in the hospital. Apparently, during that time, the State Patrol had stopped, inquired about my situation, drug tested me, and called an ambulance when I couldn't speak coherently, taking me to the nearest hospital for blood tests and emergency medical assistance. It turns out livers are important. Story 11. Duloxetine. I am on the highest dose possible for chronic pain. I still experience significant pain, but I cannot imagine how severe it would be without it. Additionally, I hope to find something for my newly diagnosed attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which has been very obvious for my entire life. I desperately need assistance. Story 12. Sorry, I can't resist. I want a new drug, one that won't make me sick, one that won't make me crash my car, or make me feel 3 feet thick, one that won't hurt my head, one that won't make my mouth too dry, or make my eyes too red, one that won't make me nervous, wondering what to do, one that makes me feel like. Story 13. I was born with jaundice. Whatever treatments they use for that, I would not have lived 3 days without them. I dislike when people try to interfere with modern medicine. Story 14. I wanted to end my life so badly. I was in a difficult rented room in Detroit and found out we were squatters. The lady we paid rent to didn't own the house. We had 3 days to get out, and nothing in life was going right. So I decided in my younger mindset to take a psychedelic trip. The experience was the best I've ever had. Pulled me out of the darkest place I had ever been. It made me more grateful than I had ever felt. The gratitude and motivation it gave me lasted for months. It genuinely stopped me from ending my life and helped me find a way forward. I haven't taken a trip in years now, but I will always be grateful. Story 15. DMT made me quit using substances like gear and marijuana. It felt like I spoke to a higher power associated with MDMA and one linked to marijuana, and both encouraged me to stop. I can't imagine what I would be doing now if I hadn't made that change. Story 16. Prozac. I was in pretty bad shape. My doctor would only give me 1 week's worth of medication at a time. After about 4 weeks, I was able to get 2 weeks' worth. I can still remember coming out of the fog of depression. It was a new medication at that time. Story 17. Albuterol when I couldn't breathe. Antibiotics when a poor doctor told me I wasn't sick, just depressed, and should exercise more. 3 months of still being unwell later, I found out a urinary tract infection had moved into my kidney. Testosterone because I haven't attempted suicide since I started transitioning. Story 18. I am surprised nobody mentioned remdesivir, which is used for severe cases of COVID-19 in the hospital. It absolutely worked for me. I was very ill and hospitalized. After 3 to 4 rounds of treatment, I was able to walk out on my own after 3 nights and 4 days. My mind was clear, and my pain was significantly reduced. It's a miracle drug. Story 19. Narcan saved my life. I am sober now, and I feel fortunate to have picked some up and left it in a random drawer. Now I carry some in my purse in case I am able to save someone else. Story 20. Emgality has transformed my experience with migraines. I previously endured frequent headaches, often feeling a near-constant pain that became unbearable. Since starting treatment with Emgality, I have only experienced 1 migraine in the past year. Story 21. Acid helped me find my place in the universe and work through a lot of trauma at a time when I didn't have access to doctors or therapists. Story 22. Kratom allowed me to transition to using it regularly instead of alcohol. After I had not consumed alcohol for a long time, I stopped using kratom as well. It is life-saving for some people. Story 23. When a diverticula, a pouch that forms in your colon, perforated a little over a month ago, I was in near constant pain, rated at 7 out of 10. The only things that helped were Dilaudid and Percocet, which did not alleviate much pain, but knocked me out for a few hours. Story 24. It negatively affected me, but in the long run, it was a positive thing. I was on a very destructive path with drugs, including cocaine and other stimulants. One day, I had a really bad trip that swore me off drugs. I was up for 24 hours, having a panic attack the entire time, and I had visions of slicing my wrist open. This experience essentially triggered an anxiety disorder, and I still suffer from anxiety today. However, I haven't used a stimulant since 2017, so that experience saved my life. I'm no longer on drugs. I only smoke marijuana for a neurological disorder, and that's just a puff or 2 a day. Not enough to get really high, but enough to keep the headaches away and prevent cerebrospinal fluid from affecting my brain. Story 25. Antibiotics. I had a severe case of cellulitis as a child that likely could have been fatal. Additionally, I experienced a staph infection about 8 years ago that also posed a serious threat to my life. Story 26. Prednisone makes me miserable, but every time I have a flare, it saves me and comes in handy. Story 27. Humira. Without it, my ankylosing spondylitis would have kept me in unbearable pain. I was at the end of my rope when I was finally properly diagnosed and found relief. Story 28. Epinephrine has saved my life on more than one occasion. I have severe allergies to peanuts and tree nuts and have encountered cross-contamination with foods several times in the past. I had to use the epinephrine autoinjector and then call for emergency personnel. Without the epinephrine injection, I probably would not be alive today. Story 29. Marijuana alone has been more effective in treating my mental health issues than years of friends, family, and even therapists trying to help. When I'm on marijuana, it's as if all my worries just disappear. The few that linger feel much more manageable. I don't get frustrated or upset as easily. I'm able to live life and focus on the present instead of constantly trapping my mind elsewhere. My first experience with marijuana was life-changing. It felt like I experienced something my brain hadn't felt since childhood. And it was amazing. Things that had not been fun or entertaining in years suddenly became interesting and engaging. Food tasted like it had an additional layer of complexity that I couldn't quite grasp. Felt like I was born again. It allowed me to live my life with joy and happiness instead of being overwhelmed by stress and anger. Story 30. Propranolol 20 milligrams 4 times a day. At age 25, my anxiety and heart palpitations were so severe that I could have died. I was in a very difficult situation and have always been high-strung. I was advised to meet with a cardiologist, and after a series of tests, the doctor prescribed this medication. Panic attacks almost ceased, and I was able to live life without the constant fear of my heart malfunctioning. That was 41 years ago. Story 31. Cannabis and mushrooms, 100%. I spent the first half of my life in excruciating pain with doctors in the Navy who just prescribed medications. This was before the opioid crisis. I was on 6 Robaxin, 9 Tramadol, 6 Vicodin, and several others in the mix. I was driving warships like that, and the military knew. My medical issues became too much for sea duty, and the military tried to discharge me at 19 years, 6 months, and 19 days. I fought with all my strength and won, allowing me to receive a small retirement pension. After retiring, I started low-dose THC, which helped my mental health. But I don't have post-traumatic stress disorder. I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. My surgeries, illnesses, and other issues are ongoing. A friend suggested I try mushrooms, so I did. It didn't help the pain. I didn't expect it to. But it cleared my mind of so much mental baggage that when I came down, I felt like a different person. The pain and struggles are still there, but I feel like I know myself more completely and so much better as a chronically ill person. It's given me hope, increased my already high empathy, and felt almost enlightening. Death doesn't scare me anymore. Yes, I'm dying. Story 32. Whatever they gave me after my 3rd child's delivery stopped my liver and kidneys from going into complete failure because my doctor missed the preeclampsia. It took 5 days, but I was very grateful for those medications. Story 33. Levothyroxine is a medication I take for my thyroid. Topamax and Diamox are also part of my treatment for idiopathic intracranial hypertension. I have too much cerebrospinal fluid, which is putting pressure on my brain and optic nerve. These medications help lower the amount of cerebrospinal fluid. Topamax, Calypta, propranolol, Botox, and nerve blocks aid in fighting the brain and nerve damage caused by idiopathic intracranial hypertension, allowing me to be semi-functional and get out of bed every day. I spent 2 years in a catatonic state before I started these medications, and it was not a great experience. Effexor helps with the brain damage and the significant depression I was facing. I also rely on anesthesia, having undergone several surgeries, including a thyroidectomy and 2 brain surgeries, as well as palatal expansion surgery. Anesthesia has been crucial for these procedures. Antihistamines help me fall asleep every night, which is beneficial. Story 34. Cisplatin is a chemotherapy drug used to treat testicular cancer. The right testicle became cancerous while the left remains healthy. This type of cancer was once considered a death sentence, but Dr. Lawrence Einhorn's chemotherapy regimen, which includes cisplatin and etoposide, and sometimes bleomycin, has made it one of the most curable cancers. I was informed that I had a 92% chance of living through the next 5 years with chemotherapy, and an 89% chance of not experiencing a recurrence during that time. After 5 years, I would essentially be cured and able to live a normal life. It has now been 7 years with no recurrence, and I can confidently say that my typing skills are far superior to those of a zombie, indicating that I am thankfully quite alive. Story 35. Cigarettes. This is an unbelievable story, but here goes in short. I was about to head out quickly to the shop when I stood at the front door and checked my pockets. No cigarettes. I went into the living room and heard a thunderous bang. At the time, I thought it was my dinner blowing up in the oven. I was 14 and naive. After wondering what that was and picking up my cigarettes, I went to the front door to see a large hole in the door. Someone had shot at it with a shotgun. It turned out my older brother had been involved with a married woman who had an unkind husband. If I hadn't smoked, I might have been in serious danger that night. I did quit 2 years ago, though. Story 36. Mescaline. I saw demons emerging from the wall and had visions of my future. I turned my life around after that experience. I even hallucinated about urinating blood when I went to the bathroom. It was a powerful experience. Story 37. Botox is a treatment that has significantly alleviated my headaches. I reached a point where I had a headache every day by noon and had damaged my stomach with medications. Initially, I received Botox for aesthetic purposes, but soon realized it also stopped my headaches. I can tell when it wears off as the headaches return. This treatment has truly changed my life. I have tried everything from conventional to holistic methods for my headaches. Story 38. I don't know if it actually saved my life, but Caplita has been a major help for my mood swings. It helps level them out and significantly reduces suicidal thoughts. Without Caplita, I was suicidal every day, but with it, I very rarely am. I'm by no means happy, but I'm not considering jumping off the balcony or getting a loan for a gun either. Story 39. Lisinopril and hydrochlorothiazide for blood pressure, and rosuvastatin for cholesterol. I would have had a heart attack in my 50s like my dad if I hadn't started going to the doctor and receiving treatment. Story 40. I forget if it was omeprazole or Prilosec. I developed acid reflux after I underwent a gastric sleeve procedure, so I had to take one of these medications for a few months. What a relief. I'm off it now and I know what foods trigger it. Story 41. Risperidone helped me recover from a psychotic episode, during which I was aggressive toward my family and pets. If I hadn't been on house arrest, I might have targeted strangers as well. This medication brought me back to reality and enabled me to leave the state hospital, where I risked becoming a ward of the state. Story 42. I was going to mention caffeine, but then I remembered Pitocin, which I needed when I had spiking gestational hypertension past 40 weeks, potentially saving both my life and my child's life. Story 43. I have many to count. I recently had stomach flu where I was vomiting. Anti-nausea medicine helped me. I had scoliosis back surgery as a teenager, and the pain medication I received while in and out of the hospital, along with rest and physical therapy, helped me through. I take medication for allergies and asthma. I also take medication for depression, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, schizoaffective disorder, and gastrointestinal issues like heartburn, indigestion, and bloating. There are so many life-saving medications to consider. Story 44. Calypta. I experienced severe migraines for 10 years, reaching a point where I had them about 20 days a month, and nothing helped. At times, I ended up in the emergency room when the pain became unbearable. While it wasn't life-threatening, it greatly affected my quality of life. A neurologist prescribed Calypta, and it felt like a miracle. My migraines are now 99% gone, and I can live a normal life again. I can only hope that I do not develop a tolerance to it or that it stops working. Story 45. Olanzapine is the solution I needed. After 7 years of intense bipolar cycling, with up to 100 episodes per year, I often felt overwhelmed. When I discovered that olanzapine, although challenging to tolerate, was the key to managing my bipolar disorder, everything changed. Almost overnight, I went from experiencing 100 episodes a year to just a few scattered ones. Story 46. Pristic literally saved my life. I was teetering on the edge of a cliff and didn't realize how close I was to letting myself fall until Pristic took hold. My goodness, what a dramatic difference. Story 47. Invented in the 1840s and used for various purposes until someone tried it for chemotherapy in the 1960s. It almost killed me, but my cancer has been in remission for 8 years and counting. Story 48. Zosyn for a variety of resistant bacterial infections found on the plates and screws used to repair my fractured skull 17 years ago. Story 49. I had thyroid cancer twice. Eventually, they removed it and administered radiation to what was left. Now, I take a synthetic thyroid pill every day. Without it, all my bodily functions would slow and eventually stop, including cognition, digestion, and breathing. That pill was not available during my grandfather's lifetime. He died from thyroid cancer, and my mother had it as well. She received synthetic thyroid replacement. Story 50. Without a doubt, Xanax helped me during a week-long struggle with panic attacks that almost made me harm myself. Story 51. Lorazepam saved me when my anxiety was so high that I couldn't sleep for days. Eventually, I started taking Lexapro, which became another lifesaver. Story 52. Benzodiazepines like Klonopin and Valium. I would not be here today if I did not have access to those medications when I needed them. Story 53. Aspirin. I have chronic pain from multiple conditions, and it is the only medication that alleviates my worst condition without causing nausea or drowsiness. It does not eliminate the pain, but it reduces it enough that I can function most days. Without it, I probably would have been gone years ago. Story 54. A lot, but specifically cyanocobalamin, vitamin B12. It took almost a decade from the onset of symptoms for me to be diagnosed with pernicious anemia. My doctor said I was about 3 months away from irreparable damage if they hadn't caught it. I will be taking injections for the rest of my life, but if I had been born a century earlier, I would have either been dead from it or been force-fed raw liver in a sanitarium to treat it. Story 55. Anesthesia. My 9-pound 11-ounce baby got her large head stuck in the birth canal. Without anesthesia, we would both have died. Story 56. My doctor added 45 milligrams of dextromethorphan to my Wellbutrin 150 milligrams. I was severely depressed for 2 years and was getting worse. Now I feel like a new person. Story 57. Zoloft. I was prescribed it for postpartum depression, and it made me realize I should have started taking it much sooner in life. Story 58. My blood work at 47 was perfect except for triglycerides. As a 50-year-old man in the United States, I am keenly aware that heart disease is a real risk. I have 2 children and a wife who need me. Story 59. Naproxen was the catalyst that led to my stomach cancer diagnosis, as it caused the tumor I didn't know I had to start bleeding and made me realize that something was wrong. Story 60. Vyvanse is used for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I have never held a job for more than a few months, but now I have nearly 2 years of experience with a remote position. Story 61. Several years ago, my brother was arrested on drug trafficking charges. I was going to go with him to understand the process of wrapping up the drugs and hiding them in the car. When he called me to go, I said, "Let me smoke first. Just some marijuana with my friend." When I called back, my brother didn't answer. I received a call in the morning from him that he had been arrested by federal agents and was being held at a county jail. That smoke session with my friend saved my life. Also, my friend's name is Salvador, which translates to Savior in Spanish. Story 62. Morphine. I was internally bleeding, and my kidneys had already backed up at this point. I was in so much pain. Had it not been given to me, I would have gone into shock, if not worse. Story 63. Beta blockers. I had atrial fibrillation. There were times my heart rate rose to 240 beats per minute, and under a doctor's direction, I took a dose of a beta blocker. Within minutes, my heart returned to normal. Story 64. Lamictal is used for nocturnal seizures. I am on a small dose and haven't experienced a seizure in 4 years, after having seizures every 1 to 2 months at night while at home. Story 65. Munjaro. I witnessed diabetes and heart disease take my dad away before he could meet his grandchildren. Last year, I was diagnosed with diabetes and was 100 pounds overweight. I've lost 60 pounds, and my A1C levels have been perfect for about 6 months. Without a doubt, if this medication had been available when my dad was in his 30s, he would still be here today. Story 66. Mushrooms was on a dark path and felt like a loser with no prospects. This is a strange journey, but I met a friend who had an abundance of them. Over the course of a summer, I moved to a different city, changed my major, enrolled in university, and met my future wife. Eventually, I graduated, found a good career, got married, had children, and became generally happy with life, often reflecting fondly on that summer of clarity. Story 67. Narcan brought me back 8 times in 2021 from overdosing on fentanyl. I have been clean from opiates since September of that year. Story 68. Using Wegovy to lose weight, I went from being borderline diabetic to having my A1C back in the normal range. I am ecstatic. Story 69. DMT changed the way I think, allowing me to consciously walk away from abuse and a path that could lead to drug addiction. I also did not feel empathy until that point. Story 70. Still searching, but Auvelity gave me such a rush of feeling okay again that it provided me with enough hope to keep going. Unfortunately, I couldn't handle the side effects. Story 71. Azathioprine had some bad bacon at a bacon festival and went into liver failure. After almost a month in the hospital, I will now be on this medication for the rest of my life. Story 72. Not a drug but an implanted defibrillator. A couple of years after it was implanted as a precaution due to left inferior fascicular heart failure, I experienced a ventricular fibrillation event while relatively far from a hospital. The implantable cardioverter defibrillator restored sinus rhythm after 5 shocks. Without it, I would have died. Story 73. Honestly, marijuana and THCA helped me wean off liquor. I don't even touch liquor anymore, which is remarkable from where I was. Story 74. Lamotrigine has improved my life by stabilizing my mood, preventing the extreme swings between manic and depressive phases. Story 75. Venlafaxine is an antidepressant. Before I started taking it, I told my doctor that if she informed me I had a terminal illness, I wouldn't be upset. I would feel that an end was in sight. Story 76. I always feel like people think I'm lying when I tell this story, but it's not my life. Rather, it's my mother's. I didn't quite save her, but cannabis kept her alive for 4 extra years. She was diagnosed with small cell lung cancer that was already very advanced. She underwent chemotherapy for 3 months, which slowed the growth for a little while, and then she was moved to end-of-life care and essentially told to get her affairs in order. We started home treatment with cannabis resin, which is illegal in the UK, and she lived another 4.5 years. Although he never said it, every appointment her oncologist appeared shocked that she was still alive. It may well have been luck and she might have made it that long regardless, but I don't think it was. Story 77. Mushrooms and LSD during the 1980s. My mother passed away when I was 14, and I was struggling. It helped me overcome a feeling of sadness that seemed like it would never end. Story 78. Alcohol played a significant role during a challenging period in my life. I believe that the numbing effect of alcohol, combined with the joy my cat provided, helped me avoid making truly reckless and potentially dangerous decisions. I did not drink daily, but when I did choose to drink, I consumed large amounts. Fortunately, I did not descend into the depths that many others have faced in similar situations. Story 79. Insulin and my 5 current blood pressure medications are challenging to manage. THC has significantly improved my mental health. Story 80. I have generic hypertension. I have been on amlodipine since I was 22, which was a long time ago. Without my blood pressure medication, My blood pressure would reach levels as high as 180. Hypertension medication saves and extends lives. Story 81. Cigarettes got me through high school. The stoners listened to good music and would borrow cigarettes from me, which gave me a place to sit and eat my lunch. One of the athletes confronted a skater and leveled him with his board, so they stayed away from that group. The skater ended up in the hospital and needed stitches. He didn't speak properly for years. The skater was acquitted due to self-defense because the athlete was approaching him with a tire iron. Story 82. Hydrocortisone. I felt unwell for years. I discovered that my body had stopped producing cortisol. My doctor told me I was lucky to have avoided injuries or serious health issues while undiagnosed. Otherwise, I would have been at high risk for death or coma. Story 83. I was definitely too far into drugs. Not hard drugs, but I was wasting my life. I read that MDMA was used to help people become sober. I took some with friends and smoked cannabis all night. I didn't go into it with the intention of getting sober, but the come down was so brutal that I didn't want to ruin my dopamine levels more by smoking cannabis. Since that day, I have been almost 5 years sober. My life is much better. Story 84. Amoxicillin and other antibiotics I was prescribed for sepsis. Morphine, insulin, duloxetine. Yes, my body is not well. Story 85. My antidepressant. I might not have survived some serious traumas and their associated effects. Story 86. Antibiotics multiple times. Liquid Benadryl for an anaphylactic reaction. Not sure if you would call them medications, but vaccines have saved me from multiple serious diseases. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.